Welcome to Casual Friday. Hi, I'm Roxanne Richardson, and this is my weekly Casual Friday podcast. If you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, you can tap or mouse over the video playback area of the screen to reveal the chapter titles and starting points of each section. In this week's podcast, I have tidbits, plus I'll update you on new and existing projects that I'm knitting, sewing, and spinning. So let's get started. This first tidbit came to me from Ria via email. She sent me a link to the European Wool Exchange website, which is EWE. They are hosting the second annual European Wool Day on Saturday, April 9th at the Museo de Museo de Traje in Spain. No idea what city that is in Spain, but it will also be streaming live on YouTube beginning at 1 p.m. Spain time, which is 6 a.m. Central Daylight Time here in the US, 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and noon in the UK. I'll leave a link to the website down below where you can read the preliminary program, but I'll also leave a link to the YouTube channel. From what I can tell, the entire program is going to be about 2.5 hours long. Each segment is going to be 5 to 20 minutes long, but the majority of them seem to be about 10 minutes long. And many of the topics are related to using knitting or knitted items as therapeutic aids. So that's either the process of knitting as therapy for a patient, or for knitters to create knitted items that can be used in therapy. And one of the examples would be twiddle muffs for patients with Alzheimer's. They've got a couple of sections in the program specifically about twiddle muffs. They are going to be live streaming it, but considering that they've got last year's videos on their YouTube channel, my assumption is that the recordings will be saved and posted so that you can look at them at a later date. Whenever there is a natural disaster or a humanitarian crisis or some cause for animal welfare, knitters often want to do something to help, and that help is often in the form of knitting. We want to feel like we're doing something, and that often means knitting something for the people who are going through whatever the crisis is. And we do that because it relieves stress for us, and it's meditative for us, and because we put ourselves into every stitch. It becomes a tangible symbol of our time, our empathy, and how much we care for the person who we probably will never meet, how much we care for them. So I got a direct message on Ravelry from Richard, who lives in the Czech Republic, and he sent it to me about a week or so ago with a link to a blog post that I found absolutely fascinating. And it's a post about how Czech knitters are helping Ukrainian refugees, but specifically Ukrainian knitters who are refugees. So I'll link to that blog post down below. It's posted on the Yarn Queen website in Prague, and which my understanding is that's her yarn shop. And the post is in 2 languages. It's in Czech, but it's also in Ukrainian. So if you do what I had to do, which was to use like Google Translate in Chrome, you'll see 2 copies of the same post, and it's because it's translated twice. But the gist is that the first images that she saw, this Yarn Queen in Prague, that the first images she saw of Ukrainian refugees were of people wearing hand-knit hats and scarves. So her first thought was that she would go on Tuesday to like the drop-off center, the distribution center, where donations were being accepted and then also, I think, distributed. But what she would do is bring some packages, not of knitted items, but of yarn and needles. The yarn and needles weren't on the list of like clothing items that were needed, But if you're a knitter, you need yarn and needles, and particularly in times of stress. And I just thought that was an amazingly different empathetic response to this particular crisis, recognizing the need for another knitter to knit. So she planned on taking these items in on a Tuesday, but on Monday she was in her shop and a Ukrainian woman came into the shop and was looking at all the yarns and the needles. And she said that, well, once she got a job and she had some money, she would come back and buy some yarn and needles. And so the shop owner, it was just like, oh, she's like, she grabbed a ball of opal sock yarn and gave it to her and said, what kind of needles, like what size needles do you need? Do you want double points or circular needles? And she gave her the needles and they hugged each other and they were both crying. And so the next day, the Yarn Queen of Prague put together 5 knitting packages of sock yarn and needles. And she's a little nervous about going to this drop-off place because she didn't know if she'd get in trouble for it, because what she really wanted to do was like give it directly to people she recognized would be knitters. It's what I'm understanding. So the volunteers there, at first, one of them was like, what? What are you doing? But one of the one was like totally understood. And she was able to distribute those 5 packages of sock yarn and needles directly, from what I understand, directly to knitters who really, really appreciated them. And so what she's calling on other knitters in the Czech Republic to do is something similar. Consider putting together these packages for other knitters. And again, I just think this is a really wonderful thing, and I will link down to that blog post below so that if you can read Czech or Ukrainian, or if you want to read the translated version, you can do that. This tidbit came to me in my Twitter feed, I don't know, a week or so ago. It's a post from Dr. Alexandra Macon, which I think is a fantastic surname for somebody who makes things. She is a specialist in early medieval embroidery at the University of Glasgow. In the archaeology department is what it sounds like, which might just be part of the whole material culture part of their university, I'm not sure. I follow a lot of people from the University of Glasgow who study material culture, and they are the ones who started the Fleece to Fashion project, and they have their own sheep farm at the university, and they produce their own wool yarn there. Anyway, if you're interested in learning how to do early medieval embroidery stitches, Dr. Macon has started making how-to videos on her YouTube channel. Her YouTube channel existed already, and she did have other videos, but this is the first one of a series in which, and it's called laid and couched is the technique, but it's the first one where she has 2 cameras going at the same time, one from above and one from below, so that you can see what the needle is doing from both directions. It's pretty interesting. This is the first one in that series, but she does have other videos on her website as well. So I will leave a link to that specific video, and once you're on that video, you'll be on her channel, and then you'll be able to look at what else she has to offer. This tidbit came to me in my Twitter feed exactly a month ago on March 1st. When I was away from my computer, usually if I'm on my computer and I see something on Twitter, I can just copy the link right into my Tidbits file. But I think I was on my iPad in bed at night when I saw this, and so I texted it to myself and then never saw the text again. So this is from a Twitter account called On This Day. And so on this day, but really 1st of March 1912, Emmeline Pankhurst and 148 other suffragettes were arrested in London after breaking windows to attract attention to women's suffrage. So following a march, they attacked stores across the West End as well as Downing Street. So there is also an article about the violence in the suffrage movement that was within that post. But the thing that caught my eye was that while she was in jail, they took a picture of Emmeline Pankhurst knitting while she was in jail. So Knitting isn't just a stress reliever. It can also be a way to pass time when you have to wait, including when you have to wait to get out of jail. So again, if you are interested in that article, it is linked down in the show notes. So in these previous tidbits, I've been talking about using knitting as a stress alleviator. This idea of knitting helping to relieve stress came up recently in the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court nominee Katanji Brown Jackson. Senator Hirono, I think her name is Hirono, not Hirano, Hirono from Hawaii, asked her a number of things, including how she expresses her creative side, because lawyers are often not known for being terribly creative. And Jackson's response was that she took up crocheting and knitting to relieve stress during her previous Senate confirmation hearings for a position as a federal judge. So this was a different judge position than the Supreme Court judge. So you can hear her talk about getting into the fiber arts in the video that I'll link down in the show notes. The knitting part of the discussion starts at 7:29 in the video. If you want to jump ahead, and again, I'll leave a link down in the show notes. So last week, I took the entire week off from video production. I started producing weekly technique videos in early 2017, and then I added a weekly Casual Friday video at the beginning of 2018, which meant I was producing 2 videos every week. And I did that for 3 years. At the beginning of 2021, I cut back the Technique Tuesday videos to just about every other week, but continued doing Casual Fridays every week. Now, there were times when I didn't publish a Casual Friday video in that time period, and that was typically because there was an illness or health crisis in my family, or a death, or some other like really extreme stressful event, a life event, and I just couldn't do it. And there have been times when I've traveled. And when traveling, I tend to, for technique videos, pre-record. And occasionally I will even pre-record most or all of a Casual Friday episode. And when I do that, when I'm doubling up on recording, I don't bother editing it if it's not going to be published until I'm out of town. And I'll do the editing when I'm on the road. And occasionally I have even done recording on the road. Last year, there were some times when we were traveling and I was recording Casual Friday and editing it and publishing it while we were on the road. Even if I do completely pre-record and edit a video and then schedule it on YouTube, to be published while I'm gone, I still have to go in and monitor the comments, the early comments. Often there'll be like spam or things that I have to delete and just kind of monitor. And I also have to do the social media posting after it's actually published, because I can't schedule that stuff ahead of time. So I've never taken, in 5 years, I've never completely taken a full week off of producing video without doing any work on it. And it was actually very nice. I'm really, really glad I did that. In my week off, I drove to Michigan by myself. So I was in the car doing all of the driving. Obviously couldn't knit while I was doing that. It's a 10 to 12 hour drive from where I live here in Minneapolis to my brother's home. It's 10 to 12 hours depending on weather, traffic, and whether I get off the highway when I'm driving through Chicago and see my daughter Sophia who lives there. And I did stop on the way there and have lunch with her. I did not stop on the way back because she tested positive for COVID. So then I had to spend the week testing myself every couple of days to make sure that I hadn't been infected on the way to Michigan. I was very concerned about that. And aside from just natural concern, one of the reasons I was concerned was I got to meet my grandniece Rosie, who was born at the end of November. And she was born with a heart condition, and so we have to really make sure that she's safe. So I tested myself before, went downstairs to meet her and got to hold her, and she was wearing the little pink knee socks that I knit for her as a gift, and she's very sweet, and I really enjoyed getting to hold her. She looks very intently at whoever's holding her, just intently into their eyes. I did get a couple of big beaming smiles too, so that was really nice. I knit my brother a pair of socks before I went. I talked about this a few weeks ago, that I have knit my brother a pair of socks about every year for the past few years. And he really appreciates them because he has difficulty with commercially knit socks. They, cause welts, red marks on his legs. So I wanted to make him another pair before I got there, and I wanted to see him. He's very good about putting them on immediately and taking a picture and sending it to me, which is all a knitter really wants. But I was really interested in seeing in person how they fit him, and especially the length, because I'd made these a little bit longer. And I did have a little bit more yarn where I could have made them even longer, but I just wanted to see where the length that I knit him hit him on his legs, if they were just right, if you wouldn't mind them a little longer, or even if they were too long. But they were really perfectly fitting. He really likes the length of them, and he also likes the particular heel that I was knitting for him. I've knit all kinds of heels from over the years. Part of that is just for my own enjoyment. I like to try different things, but I also like to see how people like the way they fit, because I do try to make them so they are a really good fit regardless of the type of heel. But some people just prefer one type of heel or one type of toe over another. So my daughter Nina, when I started knitting the round toe, and particularly the long version of the round toe, I had her try a pair on, and she instantly was like, I like this better. She was just like, I like this better. And then I had her try like a particular type of heel. I was like, do you care about the heel? And I don't think she cares as much about the heel, but there is a particular toe that she really likes. And my brother really likes this particular heel. It's basically a peasant style heel, or a plain heel. It's knit in the round and toward the actual heel. And I've experimented over the years with the different ways of doing decreases. Aesthetically, I like a double decrease line or side-by-side decreases rather than having the decreases separated. But he actually likes the fit of the heel when the decreases are separated. Now that I've got the secret formula for knitting socks for my brother, I know how to continue going forward for him in particular. So part of the purpose of this trip to Michigan was to go with my brother up to where my mom lives and to see her. So I had seen her, I think, 3 times during the pandemic. She's got dementia, and she's really declined the past couple of years. So it was really important for me to see her as much as I could and make sure everybody was safe while I did that. But she's now in a nursing home. She's really declined in the past 6 months since I last saw her. And so we wanted to go together up there, stay overnight, and go to the nursing home on a weekday so we could get a tour. We could see what a regular weekday was like rather than a weekend. And so it's a 3-hour drive, and I had driven all the way from Minnesota to Michigan, so he did the driving up there, and so I got to knit in the car. And so I brought along some yarn that I bought in December. Somebody on Instagram had posted a pair of socks that they had knit using a self-striping yarn, and I just really loved the colors. And I love self-striping yarn for socks. It's my favorite thing. And I sometimes find it hard these days to find a colorway that I really like, that's interesting without obscuring the whole concept of a stripe, which some of the larger commercial brands are trying to play with stripes in ways that I don't really care for. So one of the things I really like is to have several colors for the stripes. I like the stripes to be of different widths, like for some to be some thin stripes, some wide stripes. I like it when the color appears more than once in a repeat. That to me is really interesting. And that's what these socks on Instagram were like. And I looked at who the dyer was. It's an independent dyer from Canada, and her company is Turtlepurl. It's all one word. And so I went to her Etsy shop, and I found the colorway. And the sock yarn is called Striped Turtle Toes. It's a 75% merino, 25% nylon, 450 yards and 100 grams. Totally what I'm used to when it comes to sock yarns. I know that I'll knit that at 9 stitches per inch. I know that a 100-gram ball, I only use 75 grams of it to make socks to fit me, because I have very average sized feet and kind of skinny legs, so it doesn't really take much yarn to create a pair of socks for me. What I liked, though, was that you had the option of getting a solid contrast color in a mini skein that you could use for the heels and toes. And so I opted to do that. Well, if I use the contrast color, that means I'm going to use even less of the striping yarn. So this past year when I was doing toe-up socks, one of the things I was experimenting with was seeing how long the socks would be if I did use all of the yarn. And in a regular skein without an extra contrast color, they hit me in the calf, like right above the largest part of the calf, which is kind of an awkward place to end because I can keep them up, but they do kind of sink an inch or so. So I have to keep, pulling them up. So I experimented with, well, how much yarn would I need to actually get a pair of knee socks, and how would I construct those so that they would stay up? And I figured that out, and I figured out it would take more than a full skein of sock yarn for me to get a pair of knee socks. So that was something I was interested in seeing, is if the combination of these two things would result in a full pair of knee socks. This wasn't the only color that I liked. There was another sock yarn that she had. This one was called Striped Turtle Toes, 75 merino, 25 nylon. She had one called Softshell Striped Turtle Toes. And that one is 70% merino, 20% cashmere, and 10% nylon. So 20% cashmere is enough to actually notice a difference. If a luxury fiber is less than 10%, it's just a marketing ploy. There's no real, you're not going to notice a difference. But with 20%, I thought that might actually be noticeable. So I got this color, and it's called Crushed. It has a couple of purples and some gray in it. And then there was also the option to get a contrast mini skein. So this yarn is not 450 yards and 100 grams. It's 400 yards in 113 grams. That's that 4-ounce skein. So it's a slightly thicker yarn. And then the contrast skein is slightly heavier as well. Once again, I was thinking maybe I could get a pair of knee socks. So I decided to take this yarn with me. And when my brother and I were driving in the car, I did some swatching to figure out what needle I needed to get probably 8 stitches an inch instead of the 9 stitches I usually use for a thinner yarn. I started with a wedge toe. That's the toe that I demonstrated in this week's Technique Tuesday video. I had used this toe, I think, for my brother's socks that I just made for him. And I realized I'd never done a video. I'd done a video on a cuff down version of the wedge toe. So I did a wedge toe for me, and then this past Tuesday, I demonstrated how to do a toe up wedge toe. I don't typically like the process of knitting a short row heel, but I hadn't done one in a while. And I just decided I was going to do that. So I did a short row heel, and I used German short rows. I used a method that I described. I have a video I did probably 4 years ago, maybe even longer. I did a video on German short row heels 3 ways. And this is a method where instead of when you are working your first short row, which is a very long short row, The typical way of doing a short row heel is to knit until you can't knit any farther and you need to work your short row technique. And so with German short rows, it's usually you knit across all of the stitches and then you turn and you create a double stitch, knit to the other, purl to the other end, create your double stitch. So you have a double stitch on the first and last stitches of the heel. So the way I did it was I stopped short. So I left a regular stitch. I did not work that final stitch. So I didn't work the two longest short rows. And then once I get to the middle of the heel, then I can just work 2 rows, not rounds, but 2 rows of stockinette where I create those longest short rows, and then I do the second half of the heel. So that's the method of short row heel that I decided to do for there, and it fits me really well. I can do a peasant heel or a short row heel so that it fits me really well. I just don't really like the process too much, but it's always good for me to check and make sure my feelings are the same, or check to see if they were different. So then what I do, what works for me with my legs is that once the sock is 6 inches long from, you know, where the heel would hit the floor, once I'm at 6 inches, then I start doing increases. This is the point on my leg where the number of stitches I have around the ankle, I'm now at 20% negative ease instead of the 10% because my leg has gotten bigger. And so what I do is maintain that 20% negative ease all the way up to the largest part of my calf. So I have to do that by calculating how long is that, what is my row gauge, how many stitches am I going to need to increase from this point to that point, and then figure out how frequently I need to do those increases. In my case, I needed to do them every 5 rounds. I needed to do a pair of increases. And then once I got to the largest part of my calf, I just went up straight. Some people will, once you get to the large part of the calf, you might work for an inch and then you start narrowing it and start decreasing some of the stitches, because many people have legs that are smaller in circumference right below the knee than at the largest portion of the calf. But I like on a knee sock to flip the ribbing over, and I know that that ribbing is going to provide additional negative ease to help keep the sock up, so I don't bother doing those decreases. What I was able to do with this yarn is to knit. I used almost every single bit of the yarn, and this sock comes right up under my knee, and then the ribbing is pretty much, the entire ribbing is flipped over the top. I'll put the sock on so you can see it. So there it is on my foot. The markers help me just keep track of how many rounds I am, and I like to compare. So you can see the sock comes right up to here, right under my knee, and then I can just flip this over like that, and then I've used up all of the yarn. So I'm very happy with my socks. I really like them a lot. One of the other reasons I took last week off completely was that it was my birthday. I turned 60 on Thursday, and anytime I have one of these big birthdays, I really like to plan for something that is special to me, that would be different than a regular birthday, so that I look forward to it, so that I don't feel bad, oh, I'm getting so old. I'm excited about my birthday because I'm going to be doing something really fun. So my brother was asking me about, well, what are you going to do for your birthday? And I said, I'm going to buy myself a new sewing machine. I'd gone to the sewing machine store that had been doing, like, it serviced my sewing machine at the beginning of the pandemic when I was making masks. And I'd been there once last year when I started actually sewing again. I was trying to do some garment sewing and learn more about garment sewing, in part because the vintage 1960s vintage sweater that I was knitting, I was using a vintage knitting kit that came with yarn pattern and then a skirt length of hand-woven wool tweed. And so I wanted to make a skirt, and the kit didn't come with a pattern for the skirt. So I decided I wanted to learn more about, like, things like drafting my own patterns, like things that I've learned in knitting over the past 15 years that I thought, oh, I could probably learn the same sorts of things when it comes to clothing. And so I was watching a lot of Craftsy classes. I learned how to make a muslin, a mock-up, and how to draft my own skirt pattern. I learned those kinds of things. And I realized my machine is serviceable, but I feel like it was just kind of clunky, and I wanted something that was upgraded from there. So I just kind of put some feelers out last year to kind of figure out what type of machine I might want to get. And I had kind of decided on a Janome. So in February, when I was thinking about what I wanted for my birthday, I wanted to really start researching particular models and figure that out. So I went to the sewing machine store, and she showed me 3 machines that are in this, that are Janome QDC, Quilt Decor Couture. So they're meant to be a general purpose, nice sewing machine for a home sewer. I don't care about things like decorative stitches. I don't care about that at all, but I did want a machine that had a 1-step buttonhole rather than having to do the 4-step, and that had a variety of buttonholes that it could do. So I was looking for that, something that would be, you know, good for making clothes. I was not looking at, I'm going to get the best one because it's my birthday. I did not have that in mind at all. It was just, what are the differences between these machines? And so she told me, you know, some of the differences. And one of the differences I just noticed, which was that the higher end one had a much brighter light than the lower end one, which I knew is something that's important to me. I need a lot of light, and that was something I struggled with last spring when I was sewing. Was I always had to bring another light source over so I could see what I was doing. Another thing I was struggling with was my older eyes, like seeing the hole in the needle. I used to be I just get closer to whatever it was that was tiny, and I couldn't do that, and I couldn't use my regular bifocals. I had to get a pair of readers in order to thread the needle, and then I'd have to take those off when I was actually, it was just a real struggle vision-wise with the sewing machine last year, and I thought, well, that's just something I'm going to have to cope with. But the higher-end sewing machine in this line of sewing machines has this attachment with a magnifying glass that swings around, and you can swap out lenses. There's a 20 power, 40, and a 60 power. So the idea is that, like, if you're doing something like stitching in the ditch, you can magnify it and you can really see what you're doing. So I'm like, bright light and a magnifying glass, things that I didn't know were possible to get, that I know that I need. And it has, you know, the buttonhole features. It has a bunch of decorative stitches I don't care about. But the other thing this machine has is a knee lift. And I liked the idea of it. I could kind of understand what it would be for. And they tend to say, oh, if you're a quilter, it's the best thing. And I'm not a quilter. I still love it. So this machine has, I got the Janome QDC 5300 or 5300 QDC. I'm not sure which way it is. It's 5300 QDC. I can see it across the room. That's what it says. I bought it on my birthday. I brought it home, read through the manual, figured out how to thread it. They offered to do all of that. I get free lessons at the sewing machine store for the life of the sewing machine, but I just kind of wanted to figure it out and then see if there were things that I didn't understand. In February, when I went in, I just wrote down the names of the 3 models. I went home, you know, I downloaded the spec sheets, and then I highlighted them. Which feature, one color was, which feature is in all 3 of them? Which feature in a different color is only in 2 of them? Which feature is unique to a particular? So I could really see what the actual differences were. And there's not a whole lot, like the things that mattered to me, the light, the magnifying, and the knee lift are the obvious things. And those are the real differences. The number of decorative stitches between the mid one and the tall one, or the high one. They have the same number of stitches, they're just configured differently. One of them has got a lot more alphabet stitches than the other one, and I don't care. One alphabet is enough for me. I brought it home and I was playing with it and doing a little bit each day, like making sure I could thread it each time, you know, practicing that and developing my muscle memory. Because I know from when I was teaching beginning knitters, I would know what problems they were going to have and what mistakes they were going to make. But I couldn't point them out or tell them how to fix them until they had the muscle memory to just knit a stitch and didn't have to think about how do I knit a stitch. So once they didn't have to focus on how do I hold the needles and the yarn and get the, you know, one needle through a stitch and get the yarn around it, once they got the mechanics of that down and didn't have to think about it, then I could point out things that would improve their tension or that would prevent them from inadvertently adding extra stitches. And so it's the same with the sewing machine. It's like, what are the things that I just need to learn to make them be automatic? And then now I can focus on the, like, why isn't this working? What am I doing? Or what is the situation that's causing a problem? So one of the problems I was having was with the buttonhole maker. I was trying to make a lot of buttonholes, so that was an important feature for me. And I was struggling with it. It was screwing up on it. And I finally realized the problem was not with the machine. I thought I was going to take the machine back. Just the extension table was a little too high compared to the free arm, and I just needed to lower the legs, which I didn't know that was a thing, that you could lower the legs of the extension table so everything was flatter. I hadn't even noticed that they weren't exactly in line with each other because I was focused too much on where does the thread go for here and where does the thread go for there. And until I had all of those things figured out, I didn't even notice that the extension table wasn't flush with the free arm of the sewing machine. One of the things that I've been practicing, obviously, are buttonholes, because my 1960s sweater, I need to put in grosgrain ribbon with buttons and buttonholes to stabilize on the back. So I was practicing doing that and getting the right size and making sure that my button could fit through there. And so I'll be doing that next week, and I will be recording the process of how to do the grosgrain button, or Petersham if you want to use Petersham instead of grosgrain, how to do that and apply it to a sweater. So I'm really excited about that. And as I was talking to my brother about the sewing machine, I was telling him, you know, the way I have my office, I moved into this space the beginning of 2021, and I decided to bring my spinning and my sewing in here as well. And I knew I had enough room for my spinning and my sewing, but I didn't think I had enough room for everything to be out at once. And I was trying to figure out how to store things, how to use things. And until I started actually sewing in this room and spinning in this room, I didn't know how well my solutions and organization would work out. And so after a year, I kind of know what works and what doesn't work. I've learned so much about myself and my organization style and what works for me, and knowing, first of all, it has to be very easy for me to retrieve something from wherever it's stored. It has to be so easy. I don't mind spending a little time putting something away, but getting it out has to be almost instantaneous. I didn't realize that was true for me, because what happens is, if I take something out and it's a real pain to take out, I won't put it away because I know it's going to be a pain to take out next time. So that has taken me a year to kind of figure out. I had thought I wanted maybe to get some kind of a sewing table, but I didn't want to buy one until I really understood how I used my space here. So I was talking to my brother about a sewing table and what I was thinking about, and then we got back to his house, and he pulls out these woodworking plans because he's a woodworker. He's made me a few knitting related items. And he shows me these plans for a sewing cabinet that he had bought years ago, before he had the skills to make it and before he had all the tools. And he's been wanting to make one for his wife, my sister-in-law, and she was kind of resistant because she didn't sew that much, and the room where her sewing machine is, they'd have to move some other furniture out for it to fit, and she didn't know. But I was looking at those plans, and I'm like, this is like knowing what I now know about what I need in this room and what will fit in this room and how I use this room. That sewing cabinet is like perfect, because it can store my sewing machine and my serger. And like, I'd been trying to figure out how to sew without needing to use my serger ever, because I could never have both of them out at the same time. But this cabinet folds up into the space that my existing table that I just have out, it's actually smaller than that existing table. But on rollers, it can move into a larger space, and it can be opened up, and I can actually have the serger and the sewing machine out at the same time. it's just perfect. So it might be a year before he can make it for me, but he's excited about it. So, and I'm excited that, first of all, I know what I need and I know that that will do it and that he wants to do it for me. So I might have to do something more than just knit him a pair of socks every now and then. I might have to knit him a sweater or do something, because that's going to be an expensive piece of furniture for him to make for me. So, but I'm really excited about it. I'm juggling a few different things right now. I've got these knee socks that I started. I've got my 1960s sweater to finalize and then make the skirt for that. And then I've got my 1940s sweater. So I did start working on that again. I knit the first sleeve and the back in January. Then I did finish it February, where I re-knit the 2 sleeves of my 1960s sweater. Then I made a few pairs of socks. And then I just started the second sleeve of the 1940s sweater. So one of the reasons I really like knitting sweaters in pieces is it's smaller pieces that I can treat as sub-projects, so that there's some natural stopping points. So a sleeve and the back, I was done with those, and then it gave me a natural stopping point, and then I could work on some other things. And then that's true for socks too. Once I start a sock, I like to knit it all the way through, but then I don't mind taking a break before I knit the second one. Sometimes I knit them both, one right after the other, but sometimes I do take a break. And so the sock will go on hold for a little bit. The knitting I'm going to be doing will be my 1940s sweater. And then the sewing that I'm going to be doing will be the button bands for my 1960s sweater. And then I'm not going to use the sewing machine to sew the sleeves in, but I have to do the actual hand sewing as well for that. And then I can move on to practicing on my sewing machine with some, it's like a plaid, it's more like a flannel that has a grid on it that will allow me to practice pattern matching, so that I can then cut out the fabric for the skirt using that hand-woven wool tweed. I wanted to just give an update on spinning as well. A couple of weeks ago, I had finished my 30 bead study of hand spinning yarns, and was thinking about what could I do with those yarns. So I wanted to make them into some sort of like a textile, like a blanket or something that was squares or shapes or strips or something that I could use as, it could be have practical use here in my office in the winter. If it's cold, I could use it and put it on my lap. But it could also be a referenced document of sorts. And so I've been, thinking about what that was like, and I'd asked you guys for ideas, which I really appreciate all of the different ideas people have been sending me. But what's funny is that I really was kind of missing spinning, and I thought that's not something that I had felt before. Before it was always, oh, I really should do spinning, and it was more like an exercise in building the habit. And so I took out this kit that I got. It was like from the Paradise Fibers has a monthly subscription fiber box. And a few years ago, they sent me one because they were using one of my videos as a reference tutorial for that monthly subscription. The idea was that you would have these 2 wools. This one is BFL silk, and then this one is 2 colors of just BFL, which is Blue Face Leicester. And their idea for the month was you could spin into yarn and make them into mittens. And they had a couple of mitten patterns, but they also included a couple of rectangles of poly fleece that you could use to line the mittens. And so they were referring to my video on how to do that as part of their information sheet. And so because they were using my video, they wanted to send me a thank you for giving them permission to do that, I guess. So they sent me this kit. It's been sitting here for a couple of years, and I thought, I am just going to try this. And I had to go look up and find out I didn't remember that it was BFL or BFL silk. So I found that out and I started spinning it, and I was like, oh my God. This is fantastic. I kind of decided ahead of time I wanted to do a 3-ply yarn, and I really didn't want to do a chain ply. So I divided this, like 4 ounces of the BFL silk. So I divided it up into 3 pretty much equal parts. And then I spun a whole bobbin of it one night, and then the next night I did the next one. So I'm really happy, and then I'm spinning, and then I need to do the third one, and then I need to do the other color, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to do with these. If I'm going to make mittens out of them or not. I don't think I need 8 ounces of yarn to make a pair of mittens. I don't know what I'll make from it. But this has been so much fun to spin. I didn't have any BFL in my breed study, and I'd never spun with it before. I just love it. Apparently, it's something that it's very easy to spin, so it's good for beginners, and I consider myself kind of an advanced beginner, I guess, spinner, so that's true. So I'm very happy with myself that I'm still spinning. And again, thank you guys for your ideas for what to do with those 30 skeins of different breeds that I have spun into yarn. Well, that's it for this week's Casual Friday. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.